With us today, I have Mr. Doug Connor. Mr. Doug is a pretty unusual individual. Not only is he head and shoulders taller than most other men of God, but Doug has a passion for people, a passion for helping people, helping them start companies and run companies. But he's also had a lifestyle of helping people. In the Coast Guard, Mr. Doug was a captain and flew helicopters. Now, just to say that you flew helicopters in the Coast Guard is easy. But when you really think about what a 30-year career flying helicopters, rescuing people on a regular basis does, it sets a legacy of service and love of others. Doug is working with an organization called Life Cycles, helping young men who may or may not need some level of adult male influence, good godly men in their life, to give them an opportunity to be able to ride bikes, and hear about the Lord. So I'm really, really honored to have Mr. Doug Connor with us today. Doug, great to have you, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So if you wouldn't mind, I would love to invite the Lord to our conversation.
Absolutely.
Holy Heavenly Father, Lord God, we come before you now. We praise and glorify and lift up your holy name. We thank you so very much for this amazing day and this amazing opportunity. Lord, we ask you to join us in this conversation. Lord, I thank you for the influence that you have over each of us. I thank you for the opportunity, Lord, to be able to take the encouragement and the message and the work that you have allowed Mr. Doug to be able to do, to be able to bless other people. Lord, we love you, we worship you, we honor you. I thank you for the technical, the lights, the camera, the microphones, everything that's involved here. And I thank you for the message of those that are going to be listening to this. Lord, please soften their hearts, help them to appreciate this wisdom, and to motivate and encourage others to go out and help others as well. In Jesus' name we pray, Lord. Amen. And we got the train.
All right. Right in the middle of the prayer.
So, Doug, what an awesome opportunity to be able to help young men. So tell me about Life Cycles. How long have you been doing Life Cycles here in South Louisiana?
So we started I started to put it together in 2021. Took me a year to put everything in place. Starting up a nonprofit is like starting any other company. There's a lot of stuff you have to do for the government, and so it took me about a year, all of 2021, to put it together. And we started riding in May of 2022. So we had our first boys showing up for rides in May of 2022. We sort of did a beta start. We just did a few rides in May. And then in South Louisiana, as everyone knows, July is prohibitively hot and humid. So we took the month of July off, and then we started up in earnest in August of 2022, and we've been going strong ever since.
That's great. So the focus of effort isn't just riding bikes.
That's right.
What would you say when people ask, what is your main goal or your intent with Life Cycles?
So our mission statement says it all. Our mission is to build young men of character in a Christ-centered bicycle touring adventure experience. That's what we do. We're about building character. And the method that we use, the process is just through cycling. But the real focus is on building character.
Well, just like anything, there's a level of hardship, there's a level of difficulty, and that is one of the classic thousands of years old methodology for how you build character.
Exactly.
So unless there's some difficulty or challenge or something you have to overcome, most people don't realize what they're capable of.
That's exactly right. So our motto is do hard things. And that's what we tell the boys at the beginning. We're going to do hard things, and we're going to do them together, and you're going to be surprised at what you can do when you've been with us for a while.
Love it. Now, I take it bike riding was something that you were probably already into.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've been a serious cyclist for 45 years. I mean, serious. I've raced. I've done I did a race across America. I rode from San Diego to Annapolis, Maryland, with a team in 6.5 days.
Wow.
I've done Ironman triathlons. I love cycling. I just love it. It's my passion, and so it made sense when I was looking for something to do in my post working career, something that would be meaningful. It would have something to do with cycling.
And so how long ago, was that before you joined the Coast Guard, or was that while you were in the Coast Guard?
It was actually, my first duty assignment was in Juneau, Alaska, on a ship in Juneau, and I bought my first bike. I was 22 years old. I bought my first bike when I got up there, a Schwinn Latour racing bike, which in 1979 was, pretty sweet, but today it would be not much of a bike. But I bought my first bike there, and the rest is history, as they say.
So had you always had that MOS, or did you join with the purpose of becoming a helicopter pilot, or was there some other turn that was taken?
Yeah, so I joined.
Pun intended.
Yeah. No, I joined I went to the Coast Guard Academy because my dad wanted me to go to a military academy. But I love my dad, and I wanted to honor him. And so I applied to the Coast Guard Academy, and for some strange reason, they accepted me. To this day, I don't know how I got in. I mean, I think it was a God thing, but that's how I got there. And I didn't even know what the Coast Guard was. I just knew I wanted to go to college.
Right.
My family didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't. I couldn't go to an expensive college, and so the Coast Guard Academy was there, and I applied and got in. So I went not knowing anything about the Coast Guard, but knowing that I wanted to honor my dad. So,
well, what led you into the helicopters as a component of? And it's a very important component. People think boats. It's not just boats. I mean, the helicopters is a very important element to that strategy of being able to do their work.
Right. So, like I said, I didn't know anything about the Coast Guard. So in 4 years, they teach you a lot about the Coast Guard, right? 4 years of college and military training. So it was, and even during that entire time, I never thought I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. I just thought, the Coast Guard looks like something to be interesting to do when I get out, and I didn't have any choice. 5 years, there's a 5-year commitment when you graduate from a service academy. And so I thought, well, that'll be a good start in my working career, and I'll just see what it looks like. Everybody at the time when you graduate from the Coast Guard Academy, everybody had to go to a ship. It was just a requirement. And I had 182 classmates, and we all went to ships all around the country. And as I stated earlier, I went to Juneau, Alaska, and I was stationed on a buoy tender. A buoy tender is a smaller ship that just goes out and works buoys. So you know, if you've ever been out on the water, you see buoys. If you ever wondered how did those things stay lit, how did they stay in place?
Somebody's got to take care of that thing.
That's what we did. And I absolutely loved it. I loved it because I got to drive the ship. Right, I was a junior officer on the ship, but I got to drive the ship in very confined spaces, and working buoys. So a buoy generally marks a hazard. Right. That's what they're there for. So you're driving your ship right up next to a buoy that's marking a hazard, and you got to make sure you don't hit that hazard. It was phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. And if they would have said at the time, you can stay on this buoy tender and do this for the rest of your life, there's no question in my mind I would have done that. I love Southeast Alaska. It's absolutely beautiful. Where we worked the buoys, it was just unbelievable. Bald eagles all around, gorgeous. Flying around us. Whales, killer whales, humpback whales, dolphins.
Did you get any fishing in while you were there?
Oh, we did a little fishing. Oh, did we ever do a little fishing. So it's a funny story. My captain, who was a lieutenant commander, it's a smaller ship. The captain of the ship, his rank was lieutenant commander. He used to tell me, I was the ops officer, and he would tell me, "Mr. Connor, find me a halibut hole." and I would have to. And so when we go out for a week, every night we'd anchor.
Right.
And the captain would tell me, find me a halibut hole. So I would have to find a place where he could go fishing and catch some halibut. I absolutely loved it. It was phenomenal. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works in the Coast Guard or any other military service. Every 2, 3, sometimes 4 years, you get transferred, you do something else.
You can't stay anywhere, whether you like it or hate
it. Exactly. So I knew, and I also knew that the career path for those in buoy tenders was generally fairly short because the captain of my ship was a lieutenant commander, and he was never going to have another ship after that. That was the end of his seagoing career. So I thought, well, in the long term, this is not going to be something that I'm going to enjoy. It's something I love right now, and if I could do it forever, I would. So I started looking around the Coast Guard at other things. What other things can you do in the Coast Guard? And there are a lot of things. The Coast Guard has more missions than any mission that the federal government decides has to happen on water. They just give it to the Coast Guard. Ice breaking, marine environmental protection, search and rescue, law enforcement, you name it. If it happens on the water, they give it to the Coast Guard, and so somebody's got to do it in the Coast Guard. And my goal was to stay operational, to be able to do things that impacted people operationally. That's what I wanted to do. And the only career path that allowed me to do that for an entire career was aviation. So as I looked around the Coast Guard and saw what was out there, I said I need to go fly. And so in aviation there are two paths in the Coast Guard. You can fly big buses, C-130s, or little buses. They've got a smaller 2-engine version of the C-130, or you can fly helicopters. And helicopters there was no doubt in my mind, helicopters was where I was going to end up. I just the idea of doing helicopter missions was super appealing to me. So,
well, again, there's a element of day in and day out work. There's a lot more work going on.
Oh yeah.
But then there's the things that we think about where there's rescue missions, and those obviously come up. Depending on where you are, far more frequently than people realize. Alaska is probably one of those places where as the weather turns, as things change, there's a lot more boats, a lot more traffic, and the helicopter really is that get there quick and perform at a level. So what did that first duty assignment look like after you got out of school, and where did you go from there?
Yeah, so I actually went to Eureka, California. There's a Coast Guard air station there, Coast Guard Group Air Station, Humboldt Bay. That was my first unit. So I was a brand new co-pilot, got my wings. Woo-hoo, I got my wings. I'm ready to go rescue people. And of course, a co-pilot doesn't get to do any of that stuff. Co-pilot is told, sit in the left seat. Get us to where we're supposed to go, talk on our radios, and don't get too excited about anything. Of course, that's not how it really worked. But that's sort of when you're a co-pilot, you're just there to learn.
Sure.
You're just there to build your hours, get proficient in the helicopter, and so that was my first duty station. Fortunately for me. I say fortunately, in my time at that unit, I had some very significant rescues from the left seat, from the co-pilot seat, and they all involved leaving the helicopter.
Really?
Yeah, every one of them.
Because that's not the picture that we would normally think.
That's not normally what the co-pilot does.
The helicopter is hovering over here, and you have our guy on the line. He swims around, grabs some people, and snatches them back up, and then you guys split.
So this was before the rescue swimmer program was even.
Really?
There was no such thing as a rescue swimmer program. Our helicopter could land on the water.
Really?
Yeah, it had a boat hull, and so we regularly did land on the water if it was calm. So there was no need for a rescue swimmer program. I could talk a lot about that. I mean, I could talk about this for days. But
it's good to have a duty expert here to be able to have these conversations.
Yeah. So there was no rescue swimmer program. So the flight crew was normally 2 pilots and a flight mechanic in the back who operated the hoist. He was the hoist operator. And generally, for 99% of the rescues, that was sufficient. But in my case, there were a bunch of rescues where I had to leave the helicopter. Twice I went in the water. We always wore wetsuits when we're in Northern California. The water temperature is generally in the 50s.
Right.
So we wore wetsuits. We wore full wetsuits when we went out because we only had one engine in the helicopter. That failed, you were going to end up
You're in the water anyway.
So we always wore full wetsuits. So 2 of them ended up with me in the water, and 2 others were where I had to leave the helicopter and assist people who were in trouble on the in various states. So I consider that very fortunate because I got to do stuff, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't just sitting there talking on the radio and navigating, and there's a lot to do. So in a regular rescue mission, the pilot, so if you can picture this, the pilot is, trying to hang his head out at the window to see what's going on down below him,
Right.
while the flight mechanic is giving him directions as to, you got forward and right 30, forward and right 20, forward and right 10, easy forward and right, hold your position, we're good. When he says hold, the pilot has no view of what's happening underneath him, right? So now,
and there's no prominent terrain feature to gauge off of.
You're in the water. You're over the water.
Sky and water.
Exactly. So the co-pilot's job is, while that's all happening, is to monitor the gauges, monitor the altitude, because the altitude is critical at that point. If you got a boat underneath you, you don't want to get too low, you don't want to get too high and get things swinging. So there's plenty to do. But I was very fortunate. I got to get out of the helicopter a few times. And one story.
Sure, absolutely.
One story. So the biggest rescue I ever had was called the Mad River Rescue. We were so in Eureka. There's a river that comes out from the mountains, comes down to between Arcata, California, which is just north of Eureka, and McKinleyville, and it's called the Mad River. And there were 2 hunters who fell in the water. It's in December. They fell in the river late in the day. Water temperatures probably high 40s. Air temperatures about the same. And so we were the only helicopters north of San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
So
a lot of range to cover.
Yeah. So generally our mission is over the water, but the local sheriff, would call us in if they had something that they needed a helicopter for, and if we were available, we would go do that. So I was a co-pilot. My good friend Jim Dix was the pilot in command, and we got the call to go out to these 2 hunters who had fallen in the river and had gotten out of the river but were inaccessible. So they were on a bank. Well, they were in 2 different locations because they had gotten swept down the river. One was on a sandbar in the middle of the river, and the other guy was about 200 yards further down the river on the far bank. Neither of them the sheriffs could get to before dark. If they don't get to them before dark,
hypothermia is going to kick in.
They're not going to survive. So we got there. We're talking to the local sheriff on the radio, and we find the first guy. Easy, the sheriff's seen him on the sandbar, and it's a fairly straightforward hoist. Just hover over them. There's trees on either side, so it's confined, but it's fairly straightforward. We complete the hoist, no problem. He's up in the helicopter. We got him wrapped around in blankets, and everything's good. So now we know we have to go downriver a ways and find the second individual. And we see him. He's at the base of a cliff. So he's on a beach, but above him is a 50-foot tall cliff, and at the top of the cliff are trees that overhang out over the river. There was no way for us to get anything to him. the trees just prevent, there's no way to get to, and we normally use what's called a rescue basket. It's a basket that you can sit in, but there was no way to get it to him. So we looked around, okay, how are we going to do this? We got to get this guy.
Right.
So we saw off to the right-hand side of the cliff, we saw an area that had no trees. So what we decided to do, we talked through it. We talked through the whole evolution where we're sitting there in the hover looking at this guy.
So you're in the bird, like making these decisions, but you got to work it all out.
Exactly.
You have to think through everything.
Everything, right. The whole thing.
The whole 9 yards.
Start to finish. Because
once it goes.
Yeah, exactly. So what we said, okay, you can lower me to that place on the cliff where there's an opening. I will take with me, so we always carried a 150-foot line with us that we use for other things, but I said, I'll take the end of the trail line, I'll connect that to me. That'll be my connection back to you. That'll be how we'll stay connected. There in the helicopter, I'm on the cliff, and then I will climb up the cliff to the position over him, then you connect that end of the trail line, and I'll lower the basket straight down over the middle of the river, and I'll pull it over to him.
That's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. So we do that. They lower, so first of all, I've got to scramble up the side of a cliff.
Right.
I'm in a wetsuit.
Right.
I've got my vest on, right, with my radio and, flotation device and everything. It's not an easy climb.
Yeah. You're not in just the Speedo and the shoes,
I'm not,
and you're just taking your sweet time doing a rock climb.
Exactly. So, but it was not too bad. So I get up there, I anchor myself to a tree.
Yeah,
and then
that right there would have been the first thing that I would have thought, because you're going to get sucked over the edge with that amount of force.
Yep. So they lower the basket. As they're doing it, I'm hauling hand over hand to bring it over to him.
Yep.
He gets in the basket, and then my job is to keep him out of the water at that point, because we don't want him getting further,
And could you see him?
Yes.
Or was he below your sight line?
No, he was right. No, I could see him.
Okay.
I mean, it's a sheer cliff.
Okay.
So we did that. I mean, as they're raising it, I'm holding tension so that it goes out gradually underneath the helicopter, and then they hoist him up. Okay, so now what am I going to do?
Right. How do we get Doug back on the bird?
How am I getting home? I don't want to spend the night out of this cliff.
I mean, there's no halibut there. I mean, why would you?
Yeah, exactly. So what we did, we carried three rescue devices, but the second rescue device we carry is a sling, and that's for military operations. It's just a padded sling that goes underneath your arms.
Yep.
And behind your back. So they lowered the sling down. I pulled it back to myself using the same line and put it around me, connected myself up, threw the line away. I don't want the line anymore. It's not doing me any good. And the idea was, okay, I'm going to jump off this cliff. At the same time, you're going to, so we're talking on the radio, at the same time, you're going to move away and up so I don't hit the water or fling back into the side of the cliff. So that's what we did. I got the e-ticket ride at Disney World, jumped off the cliff, woo, and back up in the helicopter. And everything was good.
So that was still a winch. So that you were winchable back up. You didn't have to pull up. So that was just holding you.
Right. So when they lowered the sling, it was on the cable.
Yep.
That goes to the hoist winch.
After the person that you were rescuing had already been put on the bird.
Yes.
He's already safe. He's already secure.
Right.
And you're the last contestant.
One. Yeah. Exactly. Last one back in.
Nice.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not a textbook. Okay, here's what you do.
No, you don't see that one in the textbook.
I love the improv.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of, and honestly, that's kind of the thrill. That's the thrill of that level of work.
Right.
Is letting the situation that you're training, cute, but no, your intelligence and prayer, like, Lord,
how are we going to
do this?
Exactly.
And then the ideas, the options come,
right.
And you figure out what is your tolerance for difficulty? What is your tolerance for risk? What is your tolerance for challenge? It's going to be hard,
Yeah.
but somebody's got to do it. And then it's like, hey, Lord,
Here am I, use me.
Here am I, use me. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to be able to have that, and I had this conversation with another Marine, is there's a drug
Oh, yeah.
involved with that.
Oh, yeah.
When your brain has to put you through that and give you the energy and give you in essence, the painkiller, the adrenaline.
Yeah.
There's a rush.
When you come down off of that, whew,
Yeah.
is a big come down.
Yeah. And it's not right away either.
Right, right.
It takes-
Fortunately, because we had to fly back to the hospital, drop them off, and get home. So yeah, it was that night when whoa.
So then later you moved over into a role where you were the pilot,
Right.
and you
Yes.
took on other missions and you took on other things. And did you guys keep count of like how many missions you've flown? Or
No, I mean I've got a
somewhere there's a logbook.
There's
that
a
says
logbook that has
thousands of hours.
it.
And
Yeah. There's a logbook that has it. I have no idea what it is.
So then, what was it like after that? Because again, this is as the old saying goes, this is a jealous mistress. And that jealous mistress really demands your time wants your time and is giving you this drug of adrenaline that most people will never know.
Right.
It's very hard to understand what firefighters go through.
Sure.
Very hard to understand what veterans go through. But I think that the phrase, started back in the in combat or in the Navy, where the Navy is a jealous mistress.
Yeah.
And as she takes of you, there is less and less of you doing whatever you want to do, or your family, or your wife, or your kids. So, what was it like when it was time for you to get out or to get away from that?
That was tough. That was tough. Fortunately, I had I had one headquarters tour. That'll cure you of anything, any kind of adrenaline rush you might have to deal with. Headquarters is not a place for the faint of heart, but it's different. And then one tour here in New Orleans at an office. So I knew what I was getting into. I knew what life was going to be like after the Coast Guard. But it wasn't
and
fun.
again, headquarters is in New Orleans, Louisiana?
So my first headquarters
Coast Guard?
tour was Washington, D.C. in the Coast Guard headquarters. And then my last headquarters tour was here in New Orleans at the district office. There, I actually enjoyed that tour quite a bit because I was in charge of all search and rescue for the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow.
So all the units that responded to SAR cases, search and rescue, in the Gulf of Mexico, all reported to my office in downtown New Orleans. And so we got to monitor them and vicariously enjoy their successes and also vicariously enjoy their not so good successes, right? But so I just say that to say I knew what life was going to be like after the Coast Guard, but I still wasn't looking forward to it because I absolutely loved my career in the Coast Guard. Everything about it, the people, the mission, everything about it was fantastic. And so it's hard to leave that, after a 30-year career and then figure out what you're going to do next.
Right. So how did that impact you? Was there a time when you made plans but you figured out that these plans aren't going to fulfill me anymore? Was there a lull? Like, how did you get introduced? Obviously, you had biking as well, but what was the plan for after you got out? And then how long after that did you really start to find something that was bringing you back another level of transition or fulfillment?
Yeah. So that's interesting. So we moved here into the greater New Orleans area, Mandeville, where we lived, in the summer of 2000. I had just been promoted to captain. And so this was my first captain tour, working in downtown New Orleans in the Federal Building and being in charge of the search and rescue for the Gulf of Mexico. And always, if you move every 2 to 3 or 4 years, as most military folks do, you got to figure out, how your family is going to survive all those moves. And our strategy was the first thing we did whenever we moved someplace was find a church. That's always our strategy. What church are we going to go to? What church has our DNA?
Yep.
What church is going to, help sustain our family through this, short period of time that we're here?
Sure.
And we were very fortunate at that time, summer 2000, and there was this brand new church that had just started meeting in a storefront in Mandeville called Church of the King. It was I think 100 people or so when we moved here. And we found them through an ad in the paper, which you probably don't see anymore because nobody reads the newspaper. But we found, because and when we moved to an area, we went to every church that we could possibly go to, because you never know.
Sure.
You never know. There might be a very liturgical sounding church that
can't
could
go by
be,
name brands.
Yeah. So we would go and we would visit. Sometimes I would visit 3 churches on a Sunday morning. I would find out, when do they have services, and most times I could walk in and not have to stay very long. No, this is not going to work. This is not for us. But so that morning that I read that newspaper article, I had planned to go to 2 other churches, and I saw, well, hey, I can squeeze this one in, and we can all go as a family. So we did that, and there was this young preacher, 29 years old. As he says, spitting all over the people in the front rows. And the music was too loud, the preacher was too young. I said, no, this isn't going to work. We've been to these churches before. This is not going to work. But something about it just captured me on the inside. I actually, at the time, the senior pastor, Steve Robinson, still there, did all the calls for the follow-ups for visitors. And we filled out a visitor card. We always did that. And he called me the next day. And, he says, well, glad you visited our church. What did you think? I said, well, Pastor, music was a little too loud. You're too young. We're probably not going to come back.
Just being straightforward.
just being straight up with you. Because nobody else ever called. I'd never gotten a call from the pastor of a church.
That's really sad.
Before, yeah.
But how rare that Steve Robinson was the one that made that personal call, not even an assistant or somebody else. Right,
exactly. And so that in itself was sort of like, well, hey, maybe we'll try it again. And we tried it again, and we tried it, and he was very open with me. He said, "Yeah, no, I totally understand. We're just getting started, but if you think this might work, we'd love to have you." So we, that made an impact on me. And so the next week we came back. The music wasn't quite so loud. And
the note had been given to the sound guy.
No. I don't think it had. I think it had to do with the Lord putting ear mufflers on me, because He knew that's where
I want you to stay here.
He knew that's where we needed to be. So to make that long story short, we fell in love with the church.
Wow.
And as a fellow veteran, you'll appreciate this. One of the things that you have a hard time when you move from church to church every 2 to 3 years is breaking in to the cliques that are already there.
Sure.
That's always the toughest part. Nobody does this on purpose, but
they just naturally.
They look at you and they say, "You're only going to be here for 2 years.
Right.
We're not going to invest in you." That's just human nature. It's not to say that people are, bad people. It's just human nature. Well, the good thing about this church was everybody was new.
There was no cliques.
There were no cliques.
Yeah,
we didn't have to break in. And so we just immediately felt at home. And so that was only 2 years. That tour in the Federal Building in New Orleans was only 2 years. And when that 2 years was coming to an end, we as a family sat down and said, this is our church home.
Wow.
What are we going to do? And the Coast Guard wanted me to become a commanding officer. That was the next step in my career. I wanted to be a commanding officer. That's like the pinnacle of a career. I mean, lots of people like to be admirals, but those are all desk jobs. Commanding officer, you're still operational. You got people who are doing operational missions. You get to still fly. It's what I wanted. It's what I wanted to do. But we also wanted to stay in the church. We said, this is our home church. We found our home. So I had coffee with Steve Robinson again.
Wow.
Patty and I both, my wife Patty, we had coffee and we said, Pastor Steve, we got this dilemma. This is our church home. Mm-hmm. But my goal, my dream has always been to be a commanding officer of a Coast Guard air base. They're offering me that opportunity in Corpus Christi, Texas. He said, you got to go to Corpus Christi. That's what you have to do. That's been your dream. If you don't go, you'll always wonder, well, what could have, should have,
how
would have.
Insightful.
He said, you got to go. If this is your church, you'll be back.
Yep.
But if not, if you find something else, God's got something for you that's bigger than Church of the King.
Sure.
And so, he was insistent. He wasn't just, a suggestion. He said,
not
you
a mild
have to
suggestion.
go. No, you have to go. So we did, but in the back of our minds, we were coming back. We had bought a house here when we first moved here before we knew the church, just because it was a good investment. It was a good thing to do. Sure. So we kept our house. We rented it out for the 3 years that I was the commanding officer in Corpus Christi, and with the full intention that we were going to come back. And so we knew that we were going to be here.
Right.
We knew where we were going to go to church. Beyond that, we didn't know anything. And so I did the 3 years in Corpus Christi, then I retired from the Coast Guard at the end. That's the best way to retire from military service, in command. Because you have a change of command and a retirement ceremony all in one. It's phenomenal. It's amazing because, people from all over the community come because it's a change of command. I mean, it's advertised, it's a big event.
Sure.
But that at the same time, you get to give your farewell address to, and all the family's all there.
You got to move anyway.
Yeah. So it was great. So it worked out great. We moved back into our house in Mandeville. And as we're unpacking boxes to put back into our house, Pastor Steve and Pastor Randy, his executive assistant, drive up to the house and say, "Hey, you've been thinking about what you want to do now that you're done in the Coast Guard?" I said, "Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm not having a lot of great ideas." So, well, you ever thought of working for the church? Well. That sounds great, but I don't know. He said, well, we're a small staff and we probably have some things that, so that's what I ended up doing.
Someone with your skills and experience could probably offer from an organizational or leadership, presentation.
Yeah. So that's what I did. I went to work for Church of the King in June of 2005, just before Hurricane Katrina.
Wow. What a time as well.
Yeah.
Because think about that preparation. The Lord knew what was coming. And Church of the King was going to be impacted in a way that the whole region would not. We've been through hurricanes before.
Yeah.
But that one was
not like that.
That was going to be very different.
Right.
And to have your, not just your background, your skill set, your understanding, but your coordination skills with other rescue entities to be able to help, because otherwise a church can feel paralyzed also.
Right.
They can want to help, but they're not equipped at all to be able to help. And it just takes, good people within the body to be able to come up with the ideas, hey, we can do this, we can do this.
Right.
And then the church leadership also has to be willing to allow those good ideas, those on-the-fly great ideas, to be implemented, to say, yeah, let's get behind that.
Sure.
And all too often, many churches go, no, that's not what we do, and they miss out on the opportunity to bless and help the community in amazing ways that God had, I have you here for a reason.
Yeah.
I need you to bless these people, and this is what they need right now.
Right.
Powerful, powerful opportunity.
Yep. So that's what I did for Hurricane Katrina. I ran the recovery operations for Church of the King for an organization called Pastors Resource Council, which came together to combine all the faith-based response operations following the hurricane, and ultimately for St. Tammany Parish. So I became the spokesperson for the faith-based portion of the response, trying to coordinate all those efforts. So I would go to the parish rescue. I forget what they called it. The center where they coordinated all the response stuff, and I would go to their meetings daily and report. Okay, this is what the churches are doing. You know, we've got a church over here that wants to do this, and then they would tell me, okay, well here's what we have. We need some really big generators, and we need them to go to these places because we need to get gas pumping. We need to get, the hospitals were in good shape, but there's other things that we need, that we need to get, because electricity is not coming back for a while. Yeah. So I acted as that go-between, and for several months that's what I was doing, working with all those organizations.
That's great. What an awesome opportunity.
Yeah.
And again, God put you right in that spot for a reason.
Right.
Because now it's not just flying helicopters, plucking people out of the water one at a time.
Although that's what I would have rather been doing. I would much rather have been at a helicopter station, New Orleans, flying helicopters after that.
Well, you could have gone down and just tapped the guy on the shoulder. Hey, there's a phone call for you at the office.
Volunteered. No, you're too old. Forget it. We don't want you. Thanks anyway.
But again, God put you right where you needed to be able to affect and be that conduit to be able to bless and help not just your church, not just a couple of other churches, but a whole region. And again, think how powerful that is from the resources of other entities, fire and sheriff or other people that are trying to come in and help, where there's not a good point of reference. There's not a good point of contact that gets it, that understands what this translates to be able to effectively ask and understand what you need, and also to be able to see resources that are being handed to you, and not only, yes, I can use them, but also they can use them too.
Right.
And that's an amazing thing. Again, you could not have predicted that.
No.
But God put you right there for a very specific reason.
Yep.
And then how long did that last? That particular job opportunity?
Yeah. So the hurricane hit August 30th, I think, or 31st, one of those 2 days. We did it in St. Tammany Parish until about the middle of October. And then we moved over to Hancock County in Mississippi because there was an organization there, Eagle's Wings, that sort of did that for Hancock County, and they were done. They had run out of resources, or they had to go do something else. So then, because Church of the King had a campus in Gulfport, I went over to that campus. We talked with the county representatives there and said, hey, look, this is what we did in St. Tammany. Do you think you could use this help here as well? And so then I did it for another month and a half in Hancock County, Harrison County, Mississippi. And then while we were there, we lived in, FEMA set up a tent city in the warehouses at the Naval Civil
the CB base?
CB base, the CB base. A huge hangar. They had a zillion cots out there.
Awesome facility over there.
Yeah. So that's where we slept because it was too far to drive back and forth to Mandeville every day. So lived in that CB hangar or whatever it was, and worked there till the end of November. Yep.
And then of recent, that same momentum, being able to, you have experience and a position, but you say it like with ease, like, oh yeah, you just start companies and you just do this and you whip this out and 501c3s, or you start this LLC and you start the. where was the desire or skill set woven into being able to help people get companies off the ground? Was it your work with Church of the King as it grew, or other churches? How did that come about? Because that's not you wouldn't think like, Coast Guard helicopter pilot and commander is going to have a skill set with regard to business.
So let's take a time out.
Yeah.
So that's no, I'm fine. I just in regard to that question, I only helped one other nonprofit startup, and so I didn't help a bunch of them. And I'm just trying to think.
For whatever reason, I think you got introduced to me by somebody who thought you had a track record worth of, he does this all the time.
Yeah, no.
You're just being oversold.
Yeah, obviously.
You got a lot of fans out there.
I did one. I helped one company, Curtis and Belinda, I think his wife is. They have a company. They still have a nonprofit that does. They go to disasters areas, and he's a construction guy. So they go do construction help. But anyway, that's the only company I helped.
Okay.
Because and so I don't even remember how it happened that I got connected with him. But
right.
I had. Do you know Ben Comer? He used to run Next Gen Ministries before the current gal does it. So after Pastor Steve, Ben Comer took that over, Next Generation Ministries, and that's what he does. He's got Calibrate Ministries. That's his nonprofit, and he helps nonprofits. And I think he suggested that I might want to help Curtis because it was disaster related, and I had been involved with that. And the way I was able to help him was, in the Coast Guard, I had all kinds of strategic planning.
Absolutely.
Expertise. I was an expert in strategic planning. I had done that a lot in my career.
After Katrina and the work that you were doing there, ultimately that led you to similar work. And what did that look like after Katrina and Church of the King? So
after Katrina, I worked at Church of the King for another 6 years. And while I was there, I managed all the facilities. I was a facilities coordinator, which at that time was much smaller than it is now. And I also did all the volunteer coordination. So all the volunteers, the ushers, the greeters, the parking attendants, the coffee guys, the sound guys, all those things, I managed all of those. So recruiting, training, staffing, making sure that for 5 services sometimes when we were at 5 services, we had enough people to manage all of those different things. So that was my role at Church of the King. And then, by the way, and Pastor Steve said, hey, we're going to buy this building in New Orleans. I'd like you to go over and help us figure out if we should buy this building. It's an old Masonic Lodge, right in the heart of the city, and it's for sale. There's a church that's in there now, and their people have been spread to the 4 winds from Hurricane Katrina, so they're looking to sell the building. So we'd like you to go over and just research the building, see try and figure out what its history is, what its past is, and help us decide whether we should buy this building. And so I did that. We ultimately ended up buying the building. And then they said, well, we're going to need to do some renovations, so we'd like you to kind of oversee those renovations. Because I said, I don't know anything about construction. I said, well, can you figure it out? I said, yeah, I can figure it out. Okay, then we'd like you to oversee the construction. Okay. So we did that. At the time, so in 2006, when we purchased the building, it was a 90-year-old building. I think it was built in 1915. It's in bad shape. Sure. It's the roof leaks, the plumbing is terrible, the electricity is horrible.
Right.
It needs a lot of work. So let's triage it. Anyway, long story short, we did some things to make the building so it didn't get any worse. Right. Put a new roof on, enclosed it just so that we could then go about the process of figuring out how to renovate it and
Sure.
make it into a church that we could have a campus in the heart of New Orleans. So I did that. Shortly after that, our Church of the King has gone to 5 services.
Yep.
2 on Saturday night, 3 on Sunday morning, and we're bursting at the seams. We're in the old skating rink.
Yep.
Anybody who's familiar with Church of the King knows the skating rink. And it's 1,000 seats, and we got too many people, so we need to build another building. Oh, well, you've just learned about construction, Doug. Maybe you could help, be on this committee that we're going to form to figure out what kind of a building we're going to build and how we're going to do it. So I was involved with that. So those were my jobs while I was at Church of the King. That worked on those until 2011. In 2011, we were in the middle of the main construction building for the Mandeville campus, and the funds ran out. I'll let Pastor Steve talk to that if anybody wants to further information about that. But we were at a stopping point, and we couldn't go further until we had more money. And so the biggest part of my job was no longer needed. So I left the church staff, and I went to work as a contractor at Mar Forez, which is the Marine Forces Reserve headquarters in New Orleans.
Hoorah.
Hoorah. I was the energy coordinator. So Mar Forez, Marine Forces Reserve headquarters, manages all the reserve centers in the country. So at the time, I think there were 160 standalone Marine Corps Reserve centers. And those were the primary ones that we were concerned with. But then there are also Marine Reserve units all over the country. I don't remember the total number of Marine Reserve units there were, but our primary focus was on 160 small bases. Picture a National Guard armory or something like that. That's what Marine Forces Reserve bases generally look like. And so we had to, and so I was in part of the facilities directorate, and we managed those facilities, and I was responsible for energy coordination. So what that means is there was a mandate. So the Commandant of the Marine Corps had issued a mandate that Marine Corps was going to be green by this year and was going to reduce total carbon footprint by X amount. And so that was my job, was to figure out at these 160 locations, how could we reduce our emissions and go more green. So I did that. I installed solar panels. Again, I know nothing about solar panels, but can you learn? Yeah, I can learn.
Connor, can you figure it out?
Yeah, I can
I'll
figure it out.
Let's go.
Installed solar panels on units
Great
where
attitude.
that made sense. We actually installed wind turbines at Marine Corps Reserve Centers.
Places that made sense.
The places where there was enough wind and
Well, and most people don't know, but the 4th Marine Division of the Marine Corps is the largest division.
right.
Bigger than 1st
Yep.
on the West Coast,
Yep.
2nd on the East Coast,
Yep.
and 3rd out in Okinawa.
Yep.
And it has more people in the ready reserve,
Right.
and they connect to the IRR
Right.
that come together. So there's a much bigger amount of cats and dogs
Exactly.
and gear
Right.
that is floating out there. And like you said, like it's easy to say first Marine Division, 2nd Marine Division, 3rd Marine Division, and it's all on base.
Right.
4th
One
Marine Division
location.
is spread all over the country.
Right.
And
including Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico.
yeah, and where 2 or more are gathered, you know, we can have Marine Corps ball.
Exactly.
So the beauty is that is no easy task
Right.
in and of itself.
Right.
That is a huge task.
Yep.
Arguably bigger than the Coast Guard.
Yeah, probably.
So again, God is getting you ready for something.
Something.
I'm trying to retire, Lord.
Using me wherever you
But
need
you just
me.
keep showing up, huh?
Yeah.
What a great attitude.
Yeah. So I did that for 5 years out of the headquarters in New Orleans, and as I was the vagaries of being a contractor working for the federal government is your contract comes up for renewal sometimes every year, sometimes every 2 years, sometimes you get a 3-year contract, but every time it comes up, whether you have a job or not depends on whether that federal agency has funding
Sure.
or still has the desire to do what it is that you're doing.
Sure.
So after 5 years of doing that, I said, I need to figure something else out because I still got kids to put through college, and the bills are still going to come in, and I actually had gotten laid off one time in the middle of that when the contract shrunk, and I was just one of the. And for 3 weeks, I worked in a bike shop, repairing bikes here in Covington. In Covington, because while I was looking for a job, I was notified. So anybody who knows anything about government fiscal year knows that in September 30th, the fiscal year ends. October 1st, the new fiscal year begins. So and on September 1st, I was notified that my contract was up and I was not going to be renewed. So I had a month to prepare, and then this is while I still had a job. So I was job hunting. I'm writing resumes. I'm sending everything out to everybody I know. And September 30th rolls around and there's nothing. So I said, well, how am I going to keep myself busy while I job hunt? Because I still got a job hunt. So there's a small bike shop in Covington. I said, you guys need any help? I know a little bit about bikes.
I like bikes.
I know a little bit
out.
I can figure stuff out. So I worked there for 3 weeks until another spot opened up on another contract, but with the same company I was working for. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, I know you're still looking. You're interested in this. It's a significant pay cut, but it's a full-time job. I said, yeah, I'm interested. I mean, I like the bike shop, but it's not paying the bills. So I went back to work, worked there for another 2 years. But during those 2 years, I was looking hard for something else. And the company that I worked for that did the government, there are big companies that do government contracting, right? You think of Boeing's and Lockheed and all those guys. And then there are some smaller mid-sized companies, and then there are some really small companies, small businesses, that actually get an advantage in government contracting if you know how to work the system.
Sure.
So I worked for one of those small companies that is actually a Native American-owned company that had a great advantage. They were able to get contracts without competition because of the Native American ownership. Mm-hmm. So I worked for them, and I started talking with them about, hey, how do I get on your payroll so I'm not just one of the contractors?
Right.
And my boss, who's a great guy, Army Special Forces vet, said, okay, here's the steps you need to become a program manager, which is somebody who manages contracts. Mm. So I said, oh, I can do that. So I spent the next year getting my PMP, which is a program manager certificate. I got that, did all the prerequisites that they said, and then at the end of that year, they hired me on as a program manager. So I did that for several years, and very successfully got a bunch of contracts for the company and managed those contracts such that we always got renewed. And so that was my last 5 years of working for a paycheck. Wow. Doing that.
And so where are you now? What motivates you as you get up each morning? What are you looking forward to? And what is the primary mission? And I guess does this take us back around, pun intended, to life cycles?
Yeah. So as I loved my job doing that program manager stuff and managing contracts because I got to manage people. I got to travel a lot. Got to work with great people. And I thought I was going to, so when I started that, I just turned 60. When I started that, I thought, I'm going to do this. I love this. I love the job. I love the company I work for. They're really good. They're about making sure that the customer comes first, the employees come first, and profit is a secondary motive.
Sure.
So I thought, I'm going to do this until they won't let me do it anymore. Because it's good money. It's a good job. And so I planned to do that until I was at least 70. That was my plan. Of course, my plan means nothing. God has his plans.
God is laughing at you.
Yeah.
I have better things for you. You just don't know it yet.
So I was in the fourth year of that, doing that, loving it. And God tapped me on the shoulder. It's December of 2020. We're in the middle of COVID. Taps me on the shoulder, figuratively, and whispers in my ear, in 1 year, I want you to retire from this. I've got something else for you. And 1 year, you've got 1 year to wrap this up. And then, I've got something else. I said, God, I'm not ready. I'm only 64 now. I'll be 65. I'm not ready to retire. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. Patty's going to go crazy if I'm around the house all day. This is not going to work. That was all I heard. So, okay, God, I'm going to share this with my family, and then you take it from there. So that's December, early December. First person I'm going to share it with is Patty. She's ambivalent about it. She's thinking the same thing. If he's around the house all the time, I don't know.
He's going to think he's in charge.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to try to organize my backyard.
But so that Christmas, 5 kids, at that time, 5 grandkids, and their spouses, and we were all together for Christmas. And so I shared this with them. I said, I got an announcement to make. God's told me in a year I have to retire. So I've got a year to figure out what's next or whatever.
Sure.
So I shared that with them. I said, I would appreciate your prayers, any ideas you have, any thoughts. Obviously, you guys know me well, you know us well, what we can do. And they had all kinds of ideas, right? They had all kinds of great ideas. Man, you can go to Europe. You can travel around Europe forever. You can ride around the Tour de France. That's something you've always wanted to do. And I think, oh yeah, those are all great things. And but nothing's clicking, right? Nothing's. So everybody goes home except my oldest daughter, Bethany, who was living with us at the time. And we're sitting around the fire in January, right after the first of the year. Everybody's gone home. And, we're just sitting around the fire early one morning. And she says, Dad, you know what you're going to do. I said, no, what? She said, you're going to do life cycles. I said, what do you mean I'm going to do life cycles? That's way too much work.
Here, coming off of a career, in the Coast Guard, and also managing Mar 4 Res, helping Church of the King through the worst disaster in recent memory, and then what? A little bicycle company? That's too much work. What do you?
So here's the backstory. Here's the backstory. So years before that, I met an individual. His name is Lee DeReamer. He's in Pennsylvania. He's a retired Air Force colonel. And he started an organization he called Life Cycles. It was his idea, totally his idea. He started it from scratch.
Great name too, by the way.
Yeah. And he's got a great logo. There's everything about it. I met him in October 2016. He'd only been doing it for a little over a year, and I met him, and immediately I loved the idea.
Sure.
So I got to know him. I went to Pennsylvania, Patty and I, we went to Pennsylvania, we visited with them, we went on their rides, we learned all about them, we learned what they do. And it was at that point I said, I'm never doing this. This is a lot of work. This does not look like any fun at all. I love the idea of it, but when you get down into the nitty gritty, the loading the bikes in a trailer, pull them out of the trailer, riding. There's just so much to it. And oh, by the way, you got to start a company. You got to start from scratch. You got to start a company. You got to raise money. I do not like raising money. That is not my favorite thing in the world. Asking people for money. Anyway, all I could see were the negatives when
Sure.
Bethany said that to me.
Sure.
Because I had seen it all. I had seen how much Lee and his wife Marcy, they work very hard at that. And I could see it, and I knew that's what it was. That's what it would take. It would take that level of commitment,
Sure.
that level of effort. And I said, I told Bethany, no, there's no way. I don't even like teenage boys. Have you been around a teenage boy lately? I don't.
That's why I don't do Sunday school.
Yeah.
I don't teach the 7th, 8th graders.
But she said, no, Dad, I can see it. That's what. So she said that planted a seed in me, and almost immediately, God took that seed and made it blossom. All of a sudden, I could think of nothing else.
Wow.
I just, of course, that's what I'm going to do. I love teaching because I was an instructor pilot in the Coast Guard. I loved being an instructor pilot. I love teaching. I love riding my bike. I love logistics. I love logistics. I love planning. Okay, how are we going to get from A to B? What are we going to need? I love doing that. Spreadsheets are my friends. Okay, so most people hate spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets.
It's your superpower.
It's my superpower, spreadsheets. Everything about it, all of a sudden, and okay, so now I got to get over the raising funds.
Right.
I'm still not going to like that. And I got to learn to love teenage boys. I got to learn how to do that. But yeah, all of a sudden it was obvious to me that's what I was going to do. There's so much that happened at that point. It's hard to. The first thing I had to do was convince Patty that that's what we were going to do, because this is not something I could do by myself, we had to go through the process of figuring out how we were going to work together to do this in such a way that we were not going to kill each other. I'm serious. And she was
Well,
adamant.
many retired couples have a similar discussion where that has to happen, where your career and your career are now gone, and now we have to go back to being we and do things differently.
Yeah. So the process, so we spent many hours on Zoom calls with Lee and Marcy, going through all of the little details of what it was like for them, because they were in the same situation. He was a retired colonel. He'd had a great career in the Air Force, very strong Type A personality, just like me. And Marcy, also very strong personality. And so we went through that, and we were right up front with him. Look, this is not going to be easy for us.
Right.
And they said, yeah, it wasn't easy for us either, but it's worth it. And that's what they kept saying. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth all of the stuff that we went through. So that was the first step. I had to get through that. Second really interesting step was the testing that came next.
Are you really committed to it?
So here's how that happened. So I had been moving up in the company and progressing to positions of greater responsibility and more money. And the ultimate goal for me within the company that I had hoped would come fairly soon would be they would make me the president of one of their small companies. That was sort of the ultimate for me in that realm. And I hadn't quite gotten there yet. December rolled around, and God said, you're going to retire. Then we went through all that process. So I had not yet. Am I too far, too close?
No. Water for you. I'm getting you something.
Okay. I had not yet told the company that I was going to retire in a year, because I hadn't, and I figured I got the time, 6 months is plenty of time for that. So I wasn't planning on telling them right away. But my boss, so shortly after we made the decision and we had the initial conversations, and we committed in our hearts, right? We hadn't committed to anybody else. There was nothing.
Sure.
But I had, in my heart, it was settled.
Right.
Right after that, I got a call from my boss, retired Special Forces Army guy, great friend of mine. He says, we've got this company that's in really big trouble, and we would like you to come in, become the president of that company, and try and fix it. I had a track record of being able to do that, not as the president, but in director of operations positions for the other companies that I'd worked for, turning them around and making them profitable when they weren't. So they said, I know you want to be a president of a company. This is your opportunity.
This is the worst company we have available for you.
But
what a great opportunity.
But that's my heart. I mean, that's what I want to do.
To take it from to step in at everything's running smoothly, just take over. That's for normal men.
Yeah.
But that's not your motto.
Yeah.
Your motto is we do hard things.
Do hard things. Yep.
And we do hard things, and we got to go find hard things.
Right.
Let's go find hard things.
So that was the test, right? His phone call to me was a test. In that moment, I had a decision to make.
Yep.
Am I committed to what God told me, or am I going to take this really sweet opportunity that I would really love to have?
And everything about it looks good.
Yep. And I told him right on the phone, Sean, I've been meaning to tell you, but I just haven't had a chance yet. But this is my last year with the company. I'm at the end of this year, I'm going to be retiring, and got something else that I'm going to be doing. I said, you probably want somebody else to do this who's going to be there for the long term.
Sure.
I'm probably not the right guy for that. I said, yeah, you're right. I think, I appreciate you, you telling me this right now so that we can make the right decision now. She said, yeah, okay, thanks. And he hung up, and I passed the test. 2 weeks later, he called me back. He said, we don't have anybody else. We want you to do it, even if it's just for the next 11 months.
Wow.
So I passed the test, and I got the job.
Wow.
God was good. God
is so good.
It was remarkable. So that's how it started. And so I use that year while I'm working really hard to get this company turned around, because that was a hard job. And at the same time, I'm working with the Life Cycles group in Pennsylvania to figure out what we're going to do here in South Louisiana, because they had been encouraging me all along. Since they met me in 2016, they said, you need to do this down in Louisiana. You need, this will help you. You need to do this. And I had always said no. And then now we're at the point, okay, we're going to do it. I need your help. Help! So we spent a lot of hours on the phone trying to figure out what it was going to look like. Is this a chapter? Is this a subunit? Are you going to fall under our 501c3, or are you going to be your own? We spent a lot of time with his board, just talking through that. Is there... how do we protect the intellectual property that is Life Cycles Incorporated? How do we protect that? So we went through that entire process. That took us we started that in February, and we actually came up with a licensing agreement that we developed over the months. They had their lawyers. I had a lawyer here look at it, and we developed it. And we were ready to go to signature. So it was July. We'd had it all worked out that we were going to pay, license fee every year for the ability to use it, and we were going to follow a set of guidelines. But we were going to be our own entity. So we were going to be licensed to be Life Cycles Louisiana, and our own 501c3. But we would license the intellectual property from them for $1,000 a year or something. It wasn't much. And we worked all that out. And the president of their board called me up in the middle of July, and he said, God woke me up in the middle of the night last night and said, what do you think you're doing charging them for what I've given you for free?
Wow.
Those are the words he used to me. He said,
sorry, sir.
Sorry, sir, exactly. So he said, we're just going to give it to you. Look, you can tear up the license agreement. We're glad we've got it in case we need it in the future, but you don't need it. Go forth and do good things.
Wow.
And so we took that. We said, okay, God, this. And then, so then in September, I established the 501c3, got a Louisiana business license, worked with the IRS to get nonprofit status and tax-exempt status. And that took us to the end of 2021. And then I had to raise the money to be able to buy a trailer. So we have an 7 by 14 foot enclosed trailer to haul our bikes around in. We initially bought 10 bikes. So that's about a $15,000 investment to start with. And then all the equipment, helmets, water bottles, tools, a ton of things. So we went about the process of raising the funds so we could do that.
And luckily, you had that little job over at the bike shop.
Yeah.
So that always helps.
Yeah.
Grab a swig.
Thank you. Thank you, Isaac. So we did that. I purchased the trailer in March of 2022.
Now, was that your idea, or was that what you had seen?
Right, that's what I saw.
What needed to happen
right.
is we got to have a trailer to haul these bikes. And
Right.
We got to have all the bikes, all the safety equipment, all the rest of the support gear.
Right.
Assuming that the kids that are involved with Life Cycles, they're not coming with their own bikes.
With their own stuff, right?
They're not coming with their own safety gear, and
Exactly.
then you have different size people. So
Right.
you really have to think through
Exactly.
a component of people that are unknown to you.
Exactly.
And how do we take care of them? How do we service them? And it's not just you. You're not the only one.
Right.
You have other people that are going to come alongside them and provide that mentorship along the way.
Yep. So that was. So fortunately, they had already in Pennsylvania. They had already figured all that out, right? They figured out what they needed. They gave me an idea of the kinds of bikes to buy, for teenage boys, the relative sizes. If you're going to, start with 10, see what happens.
Right.
So we bought 10 bikes. So the bikes are sized these days extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large, and double extra large.
Oh, wow.
So we bought some smalls, some mediums, and some larges. And
my Mongoose only came in one size.
Yeah. And then these are hybrid bikes, so they have a flat handlebar. They're not drop handlebars like racing bikes, flat handlebar, but they got 16 gears, disc brakes. We bought good quality bikes. We didn't want to buy junk. We didn't want to take used stuff and try and
consistently have to fix it up and repair.
Right. And we wanted the boys to have pride in in their equipment, and that they would look forward to riding these bikes. It wouldn't just be, oh, look at the piece of junk they're giving me here.
Sure.
So we bought good quality Trek bikes from the local Trek guy who gave us a great deal because we're a nonprofit. And all the helmets, all the safety gear, lights, bells.
Oh yeah.
Because we're riding on the Trace, the Tammany Trace, which is a very great local park that people use all the time. But there's a lot of people, and if you're going to ride on it, you got to be able to warn people that you're coming and things like that. So, bought all the equipment. And while I'm doing that, I'm trying to recruit. I've got to recruit leaders, right?
Sure.
I've got to recruit other men who will be able to speak into the lives of these young men. So they got to be men of character. They've got to line up with our values. And they got to be able to ride a bike.
Yeah. It's kind of an important requirement.
Part of the deal. Fortunately, I've been riding my bike in this parish for over 20 years, so I know all the cyclists in St. Tammany Parish, and so I started, just talking about it with folks. Hey, look, this is what I'm looking at doing. If you're interested, I've made some business cards.
Sure.
Hey, here's my stuff. Made a website. Created a website.
And what's the website?
Lifecyclesla.com.
Lifecycles.
LA for Louisiana.com. Yep.
Love it.
And just started talking it up with folks. I talked it up with a couple of the pastors at the church. Danny Mike, and
he's an athlete.
He is. He's a cyclist. That's one of the reasons. And Pastor Gary Borgstead, who is my pastor, he runs Kingdom Business Leaders, and so he's my direct pastor. I work with him a lot, and he also rode Race Across America with me. So he's a big cyclist, and just talked about the mission and stuff and what we're going to do. And Pastor Danny introduced me to Pastor David Anderson, who is the youth pastor for Church of the King.
And a good Irishman.
And a good Irishman with a good brogue.
And they ride bikes.
In Ireland, yeah. And so that was the next component that I needed. Learn how to love teenage boys.
Yeah. And I mean, he has a heart for
he does.
Not only people, but he has a heart for teens.
Right.
And can speak through that in love.
Right.
Unlike most other people that I've ever seen. So what a great connection.
So the obvious thing there was, okay, serve it limitless. That you're going to be around all these teenagers every Wednesday night, and just see what happens. And so that's what I did. So for that year, from till our even beyond our first ride, I served in Limitless every Wednesday night, just learning what the kids are dealing with these days. Because what teenagers deal with today is so far beyond anything I ever had to even think about. I didn't know how I was going to deal with that.
Yeah.
So spending that time with them, listening to Pastor Dave, and the way he talked with them, not just from the stage, but just his interactions with them all the time, was tremendous help and helped me get in the frame of mind. Okay, this is something I can do. It's not, it's not rocket science. These kids are not. Yes, they're going through stuff, but I have life experiences that might be of value when I talk to them.
And none of us turn out perfect.
Exactly.
So the difficulty and the challenge and the way we face those challenges is going to help shape the men that we will become.
Right.
But at the same time, you had an opportunity to see a chance to be able to learn and love, but you're also able to do a little bit of recruiting. You're able to see opportunities where this person needs a little something extra.
Yes.
And Limitless has, a finite amount of time and place, but there's something extra that Life Cycles really comes into play.
Right.
And Life Cycles comes and undergirds with those other opportunities
exactly.
With these mentors to be able to give them something more than even a church, a well capable church is capable of doing.
Right, and that's our goal. We want to come alongside the local church. We're not in place of it. We're not trying to. So that's why we never meet on Wednesday. We're never going to compete with Limitless, right? When we have our rides or our events, we're never going to do anything on Sundays when when services are happening. We want to be alongside the local church and just partner with parents, single moms, single dads, in some cases, and churches, and just be another resource. And that's all we want to do. We just want to be there. And if in the course of that, something rubs off, that's great. And we get blessed in the process.
Have you seen any success stories?
Oh yeah. So, lots. I've only got 12 kids in the program right now. So we've been going for
so far
2 years. Since our first ride. So our first ride was in May of 2022. So this year in May will be our second year. Funny story, when we started, we had our first, so I had everything in place. I bought the bikes, I had the trailer. I actually had recruited 20 volunteer leaders to help me.
Wow.
Knowing that people's schedules are busy.
You're not going to be able to field them all.
Right.
You need a thick bench, a deep bench.
I need a really deep bench. So I recruited 20, but I had no boys specifically signed up. No parents who had signed a waiver, a medical release form or any of those things that we're required to do. But I had all the pieces in place. So I said, okay, we're going to have our first ride. So May, I forget, 18th, 19th, something like that. We advertise all over the place. Every place I can think of, we're advertising this. Okay, Life Cycle is going to have our first ride Saturday. We're going to meet at the Abita Springs Trailhead. Come and find out about us. I had called the trailhead ahead of time and gotten permission to use one of the picnic tables there that has it covered, so that we could hold our event there. We got a big banner that we put up. You saw it at the event last year. Put up a big banner. We had signs and we're all ready. Got our bikes positioned out there. I've got my speech ready to go to talk to the kids. Here's what we're gonna do, and I think 18 out of the 20 leaders showed up for that.
Nice.
0 boys.
Wow.
0. Okay.
God, is I know the rain's coming, but
yeah. Is there a cloud? Can I at least see a cloud over there in the distance?
It's about the size of a fist.
Yeah, I don't even see that. But so I said, okay, here's what we're going to do today. We had, so we always feed the kids. So that's one of the pillars of our ministry, because they're teenage boys.
It works for the Baptists.
They're teenage boys. The way to a teenage boy is through his stomach. I'm telling you. So we always feed them. So we had a great meal prepared. We had everything out there. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do, guys. And I'm talking to the leaders, right? The other leaders. I said, I'm going to go through everything as if this was our first ride, just so all of you and we're going to dry run. Yep. We're going to see what it looks like. Then we're going to enjoy a great meal.
Yeah.
And
all the food's here.
And we're going to do it again next Saturday.
Let's do it.
So we did that. I went through my whole spiel. We talked through the whole thing. We had a great meal. Everybody, we prayed. We said, okay, God, here we are. Use me. And next week, we had 2 boys show up. The week after that, we had 4 boys show up. I think we grew to 6 between the middle of May and the end of June, when we quit for that first that beta run. That's what that was. That was a beta run. But that's how it started. That's how it got off the ground.
So the word got out, and little by little, and what's interesting is that God already knows who He's going to bring to this. But did you get any feedback, say on Limitless, or say in other realms or areas where you get a chance to talk to some of the kids that you mention it and they're like, oh yeah, I want to do that? There's, as I like to say, there's a lot of enthusiastic apathy.
Yeah, yeah, there is.
And there are people who want to do something, but unless it's a video game where I get to sit in the air conditioning, I really don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So that still keeps coming back with, hey, we do tough things.
Right.
And we do tough things because it's going to make a better man out of you.
Right. Yep.
And so did you get any of that kind of pushback?
Lots of that. Lots of people said, yeah, well, that sounds great. We'll try it. And, they either show up and never come back, or they never show up to begin with.
Right.
What did work was Patty and I also served at VBS. So we started in May. Mm-hmm. VBS is the first week in June every year at Church of the King. So we served at VBS. I mean, why not? What else are we going to do? We're retired, not working. So we served at VBS, and we met 2 single moms during that week at VBS. And we just mentioned, Patty's the recruiter, I'm not. Patty met 2 single moms and just mentioned, hey, this is what we're doing. Because she found out they had teenage boys.
Sure.
They weren't in VBS, right? They're too old, but the moms were there serving. And so Patty mentioned it. So those were our first kids who showed up, were the moms. So generally speaking, parents are very enthusiastic about it.
Sure.
And if the kids get into it, they stick around.
Sure.
But parents generally are the ones who drag their boys there to begin with, and then it turns good. So you asked about success stories. So one of our young men, his mom is a single mom, and she works at the church. Mm-hmm. And so Pastor Gary knew her situation, and knew of her son, and some of the issues that he was having, some of the things. Very introverted, very, very shy. And so he suggested that she bring him and try it out.
Sure.
And she did. He came, that was in March of our first full year. So March of 2023 would have been his first time coming. And he could barely ride a bike, a mile. he wasn't interacting with anybody else. He just totally introverted.
Right.
So here we are, just about a year later, a little bit over a year. He's now completed over 1,000 miles on that bike. He's ridden over 1,000 miles. He did our challenge ride last year. So every year we do a challenge ride in June where we challenge the boys to go for a full week. And last year it was 270 miles on the Natchez Trace Parkway. So we started in Tupelo, Mississippi. We ended in Natchez 5 days, on average about 60 miles a day.
Wow.
And he completed that. He's since, and yesterday, we had another ride yesterday. He's sitting right behind me. I'm going, good speed because we keep getting faster, as the boys get stronger. We get right behind me, no problem, talking with the other kids. And just, he's just a different young man than he was a year ago.
Love it.
And, God just does that. We just show up. It's nothing. We're not nothing special. We just ride bikes. We talk about things. We're just there. We're consistent. Mm-hmm. We're there every time, right? Patty and I are going to be there. No other leaders show up. Patty and I are going to be there. Mm-hmm. But, they can count on us.
Right. So from there, the growth, because that Centurion race, again, logistically, we got to figure this out. We got to go places that maybe are off the beaten path, the normal path, create an exact mileage, kind of thing. What do you foresee in the future? So talk about that a second, and then what do you foresee in the future, and where would you like to see this go?
Okay, so the logistic piece that I love is figuring out that challenge ride, right? So. When we decided that as soon as I decided we were going to do life cycles, I knew what our first challenge ride was going to be. Anybody who's ever been on the Natchez Trace Parkway, it's a beautiful road with almost no cars. Mm-hmm. It's just, and it's constantly up and down, and it goes through. The reason there are no cars is because it doesn't go anywhere. You can drive it all the way from Natchez, Mississippi to Nashville, Tennessee, but it's not on any kind of major arteries. If you're going to do that, you go up, Interstate 59 and then take Interstate 65 if you want to do that. There are interstates that do that a lot quicker. This is a 45-mile-an-hour max road that, goes through back town, back country, and there just isn't really a need for cars to drive on it. So there's very little traffic. So I knew that's what we were going to do for our first challenge ride. And so the logistics of that are, okay, we know where we're going to start and we know where we're going to finish. In between then, we've got to find hotels for 5 nights. We got to find restaurants. We got to figure out how we're going to are we going to be able to ride the entire thing, or do we have to load everything back up in a trailer and move it? And okay, now this is going to cost something, right? We got to have hotel rooms. So anyway, the logistics of planning all that, I just loved it. So in December, Patty and I took a drive up to Tupelo. We saw where the trace went through Tupelo. We said, okay, well, here's a bunch of hotels here. Let's go talk to the hotel owners, see if they'll give us a deal. We went there. Then we went down to the next town. I think it's Eufaula, Mississippi. I think that's the next town that we went to. There's only one motel in that town. Sure. So we talked to them. They said, yeah, we'll give you a deal. And then we go down to, okay, I don't know how to pronounce this town. Kosciuszko, Mississippi. It's probably pronouncing it wrong. Again, there's a bunch of hotels there. We talked to them. Next town, there's no hotels. Nothing. But we know we got to go this far, and we're not going to make it. But there's a little town, and it has an Airbnb. And so we talked to Airbnb. We said, we're going to probably have 14 or 15 people. Would you be okay with us staying at your Airbnb? Oh, sure. This is an old plantation house. We got plenty of room. You guys are more than welcome.
Nice.
So that worked out great. And, we had to cook our own meal there. We didn't have to go to restaurants because we're in an Airbnb. And so it was just, we did all that planning in December for the next June, for June 2023, so that we would have that all in place. And There's always hiccups and bumps. He plans early, plans twice. I think that's a I did plenty of
Plan early, plan often.
yeah. But anyway, and it all went off wonderfully, beautifully. It was a great ride. We all, the leaders who went with us had a great time. The boys had a great time. We did water balloon fights one time. We tried to stay in place with a pool because it's June in Mississippi, and
Sure.
you want to be able to go splash around in the pool. We just had a great time, and at the end, you guys did it. You did it. You rode your bikes 270 miles
What an
in 5
accomplishment.
days. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
And your parents are so proud of you.
And they've probably never heard that at all. And because to just hand out an accolade
Yeah.
that is unearned doesn't have the same value.
Right.
When it is earned
Yeah.
through difficulty or challenge, or
Right.
you've overcome something, it now has value.
Yep.
So now when a good godly man looks you in the eye after you've been sweating for the
Oh,
past
they've been
6-8
working.
hours,
Yeah.
and says, "Hey, you did a great job today."
Yep. Yep.
That has an impact. Great job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from there,
Yeah. So the next funny story, I love stories. So at the beginning of that season, March 2023, I talked with my board about people are donating us bikes, and they don't really fit our our program. But I want to be able to use them. I think we had at that point one bike donated, and somebody else was suggesting they might want to donate a bike. What do you think we should do with these bikes that have been donated? So, well, why don't we do a drawing at the end of the year, and we'll give it away to one of the boys. So in March, we started advertising that. I said, okay, here's the deal, guys. If you show up, so we have 3 rides a week. If you show up on 2 of those rides in a week, you get to write your name down on a piece of paper. We're going to put it in the hat. Then the more
Great
times
idea. That's a great idea.
your name is in the hat, the more chances you're going to have to win this bike. So so from March until October, we talked that up every week. Hey, time to put the names in the hat. Who's going to win the bike? Who's going to win the bike? And we talked that up all the way to October. So and that's what we're thinking we're going to do. All the way to October, that's what we're going to do. So we get around to about September, and we're in our fall season. So we have 2 seasons, spring season and fall season. We're in our fall season. It's a little bit lower key because we don't have a big challenge ride coming up at the end of the year. We have a shorter challenge ride because there's no big, long holidays that we can do. So we just do a Saturday, Sunday challenge ride, and that's the end of the season.
Right.
So we said at the end of the challenge ride, first week in November, that's when we're going to do the drawing for the bike. Well, September rolls around, and God plants this idea in my brain saying, why don't you just give away all your bikes when you do that? Don't tell them, but when you do the drawing, give
Everybody wins.
Everybody gets a bike.
everybody gets a bike.
So first thing I got to do, okay, I have a board. I can't be doing this stuff on my own. So
Right.
yeah, God, I believe that's you, but I'm going to put it before my board. They said, oh, great idea. Great idea. So they were the only ones who knew. Patty, me, and my board. We were the only ones who knew anything about it. So we go through the rest of the season. We're building it up. It's like, oh, man, we're almost at that. The kids are asking me, are we going to do that drawing this weekend? No. It's the end. It's after the challenge ride in November. Okay. So building it up. We do the challenge ride, right? And so that's going to be the last event. And so what we talked about with the parents was, let's do a party. So we rode from Coop Drive here in Mandeville up to a Baptist camp in Folsom. It was 60 miles up there. And then we rode back the next day. And we told the parents, hey, why don't you organize a party? And we'll just call it the end of the season party. Hey, yep, yay, rah, rah. Everybody, we did it. You had another great season. So they had cake, and all the parents were there, and they had music, and it was great. So we ride back in off the challenge ride. They've just ridden 60 miles. They're dragging, but they're excited because there's cake and there's music, and parents are holding up signs. Way to go! You did it.
Love it.
So we get back. We do the party. Everybody's okay. It's time for the drawing. But before the drawing, I'm dragging it out as long as I possibly can. I
just want to beat you.
So before the drawing, I have a few other awards to give out. So I had made up a bunch of awards, and everybody got one for, the best leader, the most enthusiastic. I came up with, and everybody got one, right? And I wrote out a whole paragraph about what, each one, the most consistent, and I gave out all those awards, and, oh, yay, oh, yeah. Okay, now it's finally time for the drawing. Drum roll, please. And okay, Miss Patty, let's get the hat out. And I reach my hand in, draw it out. And the winner is everybody. They went crazy. They're what? What? Huh? Parents were stunned.
Wow.
They were stunned. What? What? Oh, it was so good. It was so good.
What a blessing. What a blessing.
And so what we ended up doing, I said, okay, I know you guys aren't prepared to take the bikes home today.
Right.
So I'm going to load them all up in the trailer. I'm going to take them home. I'm going to clean them because they've obviously, I'm going to tune them all up, make sure they're all there. Then I'm going to bring them around to your house next week, deliver them to your house, along with a helmet, so that you can ride it, and it's your bike.
I need to get you a beard and a red suit.
It is your bike. But here's the caveat. And it's your bike. If I never see you again, you never come back to Life Cycles, it's your bike. Enjoy. If you want to ride with us again next season, what I propose is that I will collect them again at the end, when we start, store them for you in my trailer. First I'll clean them up, tune them up, and make sure they're ready to go next season. And I'll store them in my trailer for you, so you don't have to worry about getting them to the rides. You don't have to buy a bike rack or whatever to bring them. And we'll have them there. And then at the end of the season, we'll give them back to you, and I'll deliver them again in perfect condition, so that you've always got a good bike. So you've got a good bike when you're riding with us, and you've got a good bike when you're just riding at home.
Love it.
And so that's what we did. We started up our spring season on March 1st. So the week before that, last week of February, I went around and collected all the bikes up again. They all came back. Every last one of them came back. So I spent a few days working on the bikes, making sure they were all in good shape. And now I store them in the trailer for them.
What an amazing blessing. And again, what a great picture of generosity that goes beyond just, hey, we're hanging out, we're just doing a thing, but you're modeling that love. You're modeling that generosity.
All God. That's all God.
In
his
ways,
idea, his money, his bikes.
Well, and there's definitely that's really where it starts, because he's been the generous one with us.
Exactly.
He gave his only son to be able to give us the opportunity to have access to heaven, which we didn't deserve at all.
Right.
And so to be able to see that happen over and over again creates those memories, creates that somebody did something really great for me, and I look forward to doing, good things for other people.
Yep.
So what a powerful, powerful picture. So as you're moving through now, what are the things that help Life Cycles? Do you need funding? Do you need? I know you don't like asking for funding. You don't like doing fundraisers. But how do people who really love your ministry? How do they help you? How do they reach out to you? How do they help you? Is it donating bikes? Is it donating money? Is it time? Or is it all of the above?
Yeah, it is all of the above, right? Any nonprofit needs all of that, right? That's it's just what it takes to make the thing run. Obviously, the bikes that we have are not cheap, right? They're they're
And it sounds like now you need new bikes. As the group grows,
right. As the group
you're going
grows.
to need new bikes.
Yes, we will. The great thing is I have not had to be a fundraiser. I just share the story. I just tell people what we're doing, and they donate. I mean, and you know, I say this. You know, they donate because they know me,
Right.
and that blows me away. I mean, it's not. I mean, it just blows me away, really. I mean, it's amazing the people that have donated, the amounts of money that people have donated just blows me away, and that's been phenomenal. So the whole thing, my fear about fundraising.
God's like, I got you covered.
I got you. Don't worry, I got this. So that's been great. And the volunteers have also been awesome. I mean, the people who show up. The hard part is, you know, we're a very time intensive organization. It takes time to have your own bike ready, to show up, to ride with us for an hour and a half or 2 hours sometimes, and then to stick around and spend the time with the boys afterwards. We're time intensive, and we meet 3 times a week. So it's a good thing I've got a big pool of people, because people are busy. Everybody is busy. I mean, you don't talk to anybody who says, "Oh, I'm just sitting around waiting for somebody to ask me what to do." It's just not the world we live in. So that's always something that you know, anybody who's got even though, so I've got one of the dads was not a cyclist. He's got 2 boys in the program, not a cyclist, but he said, I want to just spend time with my boys, so I'm going to ride with them. So he just uses one of our bikes, rides with us, and gets to spend that time with his boys. I mean, that's the ultimate, right? That's the ultimate, you know, because he's totally invested in them and in us, and it really makes a difference. But yeah, so we're gonna, you know, so to do that challenge ride, that's obviously an expensive proposition. To buy new bikes and equipment and helmets, to feed them. Now, have you seen what a teenage boy can eat these days?
Oh yes, very well.
It's Isaac. It's, you know, so God has been very good. And he has provided more than what we need, but we're always obviously looking for more. We have had some very nice bikes donated, and for the most part, we use those in other ways besides just for the boys, because they're, you know, we want to have everybody to the extent that we can on the same type of bike. But I can turn those bikes around and sell them for the ministry. Sometimes we use them for, you know, if a parent or a volunteer wants to ride with us but doesn't have their own bike, we can use it that way. So all those ways. And we also, I need to mention this. So for the first year and a half that we did this, we had a very generous individual who donated his time and his cooking skills to provide meals for 90% of our rides. And he's an awesome man. I won't mention his name, although if you've been to any large disaster relief efforts, he's probably been the guy who's cooking for you. But
he doesn't have a boat in Alaska by any chance, does he?
I don't know. I don't know if he has a boat in Alaska or not. I don't know. But anyway, he's done that. He recently had to step back from that, but that was just a tremendous blessing that he did that for us. And you know, there are all kinds of people who've done great things to enable us to do this, to make it so that we're, you know, it's not just the Patty and Doug show.
Love it. So as you move forward here, we're at the early part of 2024. Love to have you back, and love to continue to hear these stories.
Sure.
And also, whether you realize it or not, you're inspiring to others who have a we-oriented mentality, a service-level mentality that you just can't shake that off.
Right.
And they may be looking for a similar, like, man, what are we going to do now? You
Right.
know, I've committed so much of my life to the military or ministry, or I'm going to retire from the fire department, or retire from the police department, or retire from whatever that might look like, and I don't really have a clear picture as to what that might be.
Exactly.
So you inspire others at multiple levels. The parents who have kids that they may need additional things, and the kids themselves, man, I'd like to get involved in something like that. That's maybe not sports, or maybe not something that is very cost intensive.
Right.
So that time frame is pretty good. The general region that you're working in is St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana, southeast Louisiana.
Yes.
The general location that you typically make your common rides is along the St. Tammany Trace, correct?
Yes.
And where does that typically run?
So we usually start at Coop Drive, which is a park and ride and a trailhead right across the street from the church. And they've got a lot of facilities there that make it a great place to start and end our rides and to meet, parking and all that stuff. And then we'll start there and we'll ride wherever.
So you go north.
We go north.
Come
we go
back
south.
Around, south. Go south. Come back up.
On the weekends we try and get up in. So we'll start there, but we'll try and get up into the hills in Louisiana, which is at North Covington.
That's what, 12 feet higher than the usual?
Yeah, a little bit higher than the levees. Yeah. So if anybody knows where the Instigator Farm is in north of Abita, that's where we try and go up there, because there are some hills. Because we have to train in hills, because the challenge rides that we have always have hills. And we don't have any hills around here.
If people don't realize, Mississippi is higher elevation than most of Louisiana.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like a lot.
Yeah. And this summer, we're going to Georgia. We're going to ride from Atlanta to Savannah. And that's a 400-mile ride, and it's got 15,000 feet of climbing in 400 miles. I got to get these boys in shape. I got to whip them up.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to ride some hills. So that's what we do on the weekends when we go out on Saturdays. We try and get some hills in so that they see what it's like to pedal against the gravity.
We do tough things.
That's right. We do. And the last weekend was our first hill ride. And they did an amazing job. I mean, I was amazed. It's like we were back, last year when they were in the top shape. And they've only been riding for a couple of weeks.
Well, you're an amazing testament to hearing what God is saying to you and being willing and obedient to be able to pull it off, and realizing that God's going to make up the difference.
Yeah.
So how would you encourage someone else who's in a similar situation, a similar boat, to be able, they may hear that call, they're not quite sure. How would you encourage them?
So the great thing about this, our particular program, is that we have it in a can. Because we went through the process with Pennsylvania. The guys in Pennsylvania and I are totally in agreement with this. We can give this to anybody, and you can do it with any hobby. So if you're into fishing and you want to mentor boys by taking them fishing because you got a boat and you can do it fishing. You can do it golfing. This is not rocket science.
The hard part's done.
The hard part is done.
The details.
What it looks like for you.
All of that. So it's the widget. You get to pick the how do we want to do this.
Right, exactly. What's your hobby? What's your passion?
Yeah.
Do you have a passion about something? If you do, you can turn it into a ministry.
Wow.
Yeah. And we can help you. And we want to help you. We absolutely want to help you do that.
What an encouragement. So again, it's not just about riding bikes.
No,
it could be about any other thing.
Exactly.
So that in and of itself has democratized the confusion or the complexity and made it that much easier. And so God has worked through you with, again, decades of experience in organizational management, leadership, and rescuing and helping and saving people in way after way after way, to be able to take you and the gentleman who was an Air Force pilot. I mean, come on, what a phenomenal gig that is.
Yep.
to be able to turn around and say, I have something better, because the next generation of young leader is going to need to be inspired by men who have a willingness to come into their lives and to invest that time and invest in those lives.
Yeah.
And again, parents as well, not necessarily have all those resources or have it quite figured out.
Right.
And if I love the relationship with churches to be able to come alongside and provide that. And we kind of touched on it, like the one biggest thing might be, hey, well, what happens if you fall off the bike? Oh, you're going to fall off the bike.
Yeah, you're going to crash. That's a guarantee.
So when that happens,
Yeah.
we don't want to get involved in anything because there might be some liability. Wrong answer.
Yeah, exactly.
God is going to make this up, and life is kind of filled with difficulty,
Right.
Sort of filled with challenges,
Right.
So not to be afraid of the likelihood that somebody is going to fall off a bike.
Right.
They're going to skin their knee. We're gonna still love them, and we're gonna help them through it. It's how do you get up off the ground?
Right. Right.
How do you get back on that bike? Because that is a picture of life, and life is going to be filled with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really, really honored to have an opportunity to hear not only what you're doing right now within Life Cycles, but the fact that you're building that organization in such a way that it is in a can, as you say. I love that phrase. Like it's a ready-made,
Right.
just add water, just add interest, just add the Holy Spirit, the love of kids, and something worthy to do that gathers them together.
Exactly.
So what a powerful, powerful thing.
Thank you.
Doug, thank you for your time,
Oh,
sir.
man.
What an honor.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sean. Cut.
Dun, dun, dun.